Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're wading into the complex and honestly deeply misunderstood worlds of anxiety and depression.
And we really want to keep things calm and clear today.
Yeah, exactly. We're
Yeah.
cutting through the noise, avoiding the heavy medical jargon to just look at what's actually happening in the mind and the body. We have a really fascinating stack of sources to guide us today.
We do. We're pulling from neurobiology, some groundbreaking psychological research out of the University of Liège, and even, which is surprising, the grounding wisdom of ancient Stoic philosophy.
Right. And the goal for today is just to have a comfortable, open conversation. We want to help you, the listener, build a gentle framework for understanding all of this. It's an incredible journey through the science of the mind.
Just a really safe space to explore this.
Exactly. And to really grasp what's going on, you're going to learn some truly surprising things. Like, we'll look at why a medication originally meant to treat tuberculosis in 1952 completely changed modern psychiatry.
That story is wild.
It really is. We'll also uncover the real hidden story behind Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream. And we'll even explore how playing Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Switch is actually being studied as a legitimate, highly effective therapeutic tool.
It's a vast landscape, but I think to start, we really need to clear away some of the cultural clutter.
Yeah, there is so much misinformation out there.
So much, especially about just feeling low. And it often starts with how we label things.
That brings up a perfect example, actually. Blue Monday.
Oh, right.
You've probably heard of it. It supposedly falls on the third Monday of January, and it's heavily publicized as the most depressing day of the year. The whole narrative is that, the days are short, the holidays are over, the weather's miserable, and everyone collectively just hits rock bottom.
But the truth behind it is...
Completely made up.
Yeah.
It's not based on any psychological science whatsoever. It was actually a marketing stunt.
a literal advertisement.
Exactly. It was created back in 2005 by a travel agency called Sky Travel, engineered entirely just to sell more holiday packages to sunny destinations.
Which is funny, but it perfectly illustrates how easily we accept these concepts when they offer a neat, simple label for feeling down. But it's really crucial to separate a temporary drop in mood, what the French sometimes refer to as a déprime, from actual clinical depression.
Right, because a temporary low mood it's just a natural reaction to a bad day.
Or a stressful week or gloomy weather, and it tends to lift if you change your routine, get some rest, or do something enjoyable. Clinical depression operates on a completely different level. It is a genuine, pervasive medical condition.
So for someone listening right now who might be wondering where that line is actually drawn, how do medical professionals differentiate the two?
The clinical cutoff point we usually look for is a duration of 2 weeks.
2 weeks of just constant symptoms.
Exactly. If someone experiences a persistent, heavy set of symptoms for over 2 weeks without any relief, we start looking at depression. And it isn't just about feeling sad.
All right, it's much more physical than that.
It is. The clinical state is characterized by a profound total loss of the will to live, a severe drop in self-esteem, and an absolute inability to feel pleasure. When patients describe this state, they rarely just say they feel unhappy.
They use those incredibly vivid metaphors.
Yes. They say it feels like being wrapped tightly in thick, suffocating cotton, or being hopelessly lost in a dense gray fog where external reality simply cannot reach them.
Winston Churchill famously had a name for his own struggles with this.
The black
The
dog.
black dog, yeah. He said it would follow him around, constantly casting a shadow over his entire life. And what makes it so complex is that it is a pain completely invisible to the outside world.
Which brings us to Edvard Munch.
Right. Consider the artist Edvard Munch and his iconic painting, The Scream. For a long time, art critics and historians actually thought the swirling, fiery sky in that painting represented a real geological event.
An exploding volcano, I think.
Yes, a volcano in Indonesia that had turned the European skies red. But Munch wasn't painting the weather. He was painting his own agonizing inner despair.
Putting his invisible depression right onto the canvas.
Exactly, showing people how the world physically felt to him.
And that invisible burden is incredibly common. It's vital to remember that this can happen to absolutely anyone. Statistically, 1 in 5 people will experience an episode of depression in their lifetime.
1 in 5.
And that statistic includes people who appear to have everything perfectly put together. The highly successful, the wealthy, the famous.
We see this surface in high-pressure environments all the time. Look at the legendary soccer star Thierry Henry. He spent his entire massively successful career burying his emotions.
Because of the pressure from his father, right?
Yeah, he carried this immense pressure to always project strength, to never show a single ounce of vulnerability. But then the COVID isolation hit. Stripped of his usual routines and distractions, all those suppressed emotions just came flooding to the surface.
He was forced to sit with it.
And he later admitted that he broke down and cried every single day during that period. Or take the incredible musician Stromae. He suffered a very severe relapse of his depression, but it wasn't triggered by a psychological event at all.
It was medical.
Yes. It was triggered by an adverse reaction to an anti-malaria medication he took while on tour in Africa. It's a stark reminder of how physically and chemically linked our mood really is.
And looking at the broader picture of diagnosis, it's important to understand that depression doesn't follow a single script. The manifestations vary wildly from person to person.
It's not just crying in bed.
Not at all. One individual might suffer from severe insomnia, functioning on only 3 hours of sleep a night, while another might experience hypersomnia, sleeping 14 hours a day and still waking up utterly exhausted.
And there are demographic patterns, too.
Statistically, women are more vulnerable to depression, and their symptoms often present as deep, pervasive sadness, frequent crying, and intense mental rumination. Men, conversely, often mask or manifest their depression differently. Frequently through a profound sense of failure, heightened irritability, and a total loss of interest in hobbies or careers they once loved.
Which brings us to the science of it all, the why behind that dense gray fog. And the story of how modern medicine started treating the brain chemistry of depression is just fascinating.
The 1952 story.
Yes. Back in 1952, doctors were running clinical trials with a drug called aproniazid. They were hoping it would be a breakthrough cure for tuberculosis.
But it totally failed to cure the TB.
It did. But the doctors noticed something strange happening on the wards. The patients taking this medication suddenly became incredibly sociable. They were eating better, their moods lifted significantly, and they felt emotionally balanced.
Which is such an amazing accidental discovery.
It birthed the entire modern era of SSRI antidepressants, which, just to cut through the medical jargon, stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Basically, these drugs block the brain from reabsorbing serotonin, leaving more of it active and floating around in your system.
And that led to the prevailing theory that depression was simply caused by a lack of serotonin.
Right.
But there is a massive gap in that logic, and addressing it actually offers a lot of comfort to people struggling with treatments. Boosting serotonin helps relieve the symptoms for many people, but that does not mean a lack of serotonin caused the depression in the first place.
Wait, if boosting serotonin works to fix the problem, how can a lack of it not be the root cause? That feels kind of contradictory.
It does sound counterintuitive, but think of it like taking an aspirin for a headache. If you have a terrible headache, taking an aspirin will likely cure it.
Sure.
But your headache was absolutely not caused by an aspirin deficiency in your brain. The medication is treating the symptom effectively, but it isn't necessarily addressing the root cause. Antidepressants are a crucial life-saving tool for many, but they are just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
That makes perfect sense.
To really understand depression, we have to look beyond simple chemical levels and look at the physical structure of our thoughts. We have to look at neuroplasticity.
The neural highway concept.
Yeah.
This completely reframes how we think about getting stuck in a rut.
Exactly. Imagine your brain as a vast physical landscape. Every time you have a thought, it leaves a little trail in the dirt.
Like walking through tall grass.
Right. And if you repeat that thought, the trail becomes a worn path, then a paved road, and eventually, if repeated enough, a massive high-speed neural highway. In a healthy brain, neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to adapt and form new connections, allows you to build new roads easily.
But in a depressed brain,
that neuroplasticity degrades. The brain gets trapped on a high-speed neural highway of negative thoughts. Ideas like, I'm not good enough, or things will never get better, travel so fast and so automatically on that highway that it feels physically impossible to take a different route.
Which is exactly why just telling someone to think positively is so useless and frustrating.
It's worse than useless.
You're essentially asking them to drive a car through a dense, unpaved jungle when there is an 8-lane negative highway right next to them. But here's where science is finding some truly surprising interventions to help the brain build new roads. For instance, doctors in emergency rooms started noticing a bizarre pattern.
With ketamine?
Yes. Patients who were given ketamine, which is widely known as an animal tranquilizer for acute injuries like a broken leg, were waking up and saying, hey, my leg is completely broken, but I'm in a fantastic mood.
And that unexpected observation sparked a massive wave of psychiatric research. We are now finding that substances like ketamine and even certain psychedelics like LSD or psilocybin, when administered under strict medical supervision, have a profound, immediate effect on the brain.
They sort of reset things.
They temporarily open a window of heightened neuroplasticity. For a short period, they essentially shut down that negative neural highway, allowing the brain to wander freely and form new, healthier pathways.
Wow.
It gives the patient a brief, vital chance to experience the world without the heavy filter of their depressive schema, that rigid, automatic mental framework that forces you to view everything through a lens of hopelessness.
And it is not just happening in our heads either. It is happening in our bellies.
The gut-brain connection.
It is incredibly powerful. Our sources highlighted a study where researchers extracted gut bacteria from human beings suffering from clinical depression, and they implanted that bacteria into healthy mice.
And the results were staggering.
The mice actually became depressed. They lost their physical energy, they stopped exploring their environment, and they lost interest in their surroundings. Our physical health, right down to our gut microbiome, is in constant, intimate dialogue with our mental state.
So our current environment, down to the bacteria in our modern diets, is clearly affecting us. But to fully understand this, we actually need to look backwards.
Way back.
Because some researchers think the hardware we are using to process this modern world is running on ancient evolutionary software. What if depression isn't just a malfunction, but an ancient evolutionary survival tool?
The rock star theory. This completely changes the perspective on lack of motivation.
It makes a lot of logical sense when you frame it around energy conservation. The theory suggests that depression might be the body's drastic biological way of forcing you to abandon an impossible or deeply damaging goal.
Okay, so give me an example.
Let's say you are pouring all your physical, mental, and emotional resources into becoming a world-famous rock star, or trying to fix a fundamentally broken, toxic relationship, and it is simply never going to work.
Just draining yourself.
Right. Instead of letting you deplete yourself to the point of death, the body pulls the emergency brake. It shuts down your motivation to save your energy, essentially forcing you to retreat, reevaluate, and eventually choose a more sustainable path for survival.
That is profound. And there's also a fascinating genetic theory tied to our ancient ancestors, the Denisovan gene mutation.
Right, the Denisovan mutation. Thousands of years ago, altering how cells process zinc was a brilliant survival mechanism. Zinc regulates metabolism, so changing how it was processed helped these ancient hominins survive extreme, punishing cold environments.
But what does zinc have to do with mood?
Well, zinc also plays a critical role in how our brain's synapses communicate with each other. Fast forward to today, we aren't fighting ice ages, yet we still carry that altered zinc regulation in our DNA.
Oh, I see.
Researchers now suspect that under modern psychological stress, this same ancient genetic quirk disrupts our neurotransmitters, making us much more susceptible to depressive states. We are carrying ancient survival tools in a modern world that no longer needs them.
Which brings us to the present day. What do we actually do about it? How do we take action when the body has pulled that emergency brake?
It requires gentle but deliberate steps.
I was reading through Sylvie Blairy's research on behavioral activation from the University of Liège, and the results from one specific daily log study completely blew my mind.
Behavioral activation is fascinating.
Because when you are depressed, your absolute strongest instinct is avoidance. You want to hide in bed, avoid your friends, avoid the simplest tasks. It feels like self-protection. Behavioral activation is a therapy that gently forces you to push against that avoidance. But how does simply writing down your daily chores actually rewire a depressed brain?
The mechanics of the study are brilliant. Blairy's team had one group of depressed patients keep a meticulous diary of their daily activities. But crucially, they had to specifically note the level of pleasure and the sense of mastery or accomplishment that each activity brought them.
Even incredibly small things.
Exactly. Like finally doing the dishes or taking a shower. They compared this to a control group that simply logged what they ate every day.
And the results were stunning. Simply keeping that specific activity log and forcing the brain to physically acknowledge that certain actions brought a tiny bit of pleasure or a sense of control significantly lowered their depression levels.
It creates evidence that they can still feel things.
And after 16 weeks, this behavioral activation worked as effectively as taking daily antidepressants, but with absolutely no physical side effects. It's the power of the pen, literally forcing your brain to document reality and build a new path out of the depressive fog.
And treatments don't have to look like traditional clinical therapy either. Movement and engagement are incredibly powerful tools.
Like the dancing study.
Yes.
A recent massive study looked at physical activity, and they found that dancing, just freely dancing around, moving your body to music in your living room, is actually more effective at fighting depression than highly structured exercises like yoga or running.
It is the freedom of movement.
And then there's the Super Mario study. German researchers took a group of patients with depression and had them play Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Switch. The premise sounds almost too simple to be true, but it worked.
It works because of how it engages the brain's reward system. As the patients progressed in the game, navigating obstacles and moving forward to the next level, the researchers saw a measurable positive rebound effect in their real lives.
Because they were succeeding at something.
Right. The game provided a safe, immediate sense of progression and control. That simulated achievement actually helped them better articulate their own symptoms and feelings to their doctors because they felt a renewed sense of agency.
Now, what about the other end of the spectrum? For very severe treatment-resistant depression, we have to rethink some of our older assumptions, specifically regarding electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT.
The cultural stigma around ECT is immense. Most people immediately picture that terrifying, abusive scene from the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right, the horrific asylum imagery.
But modern ECT is absolutely nothing like that. It is a highly refined medical procedure done under general anesthesia. It functions as a highly controlled, incredibly precise reset for the brain's electrical circuits.
And it actually works.
The clinical data is undeniable. For severe, life-threatening cases where medication and traditional therapy have completely failed, ECT has a massive 95% effectiveness rate. It is a life-saving intervention, not a punishment.
It is all about finding the exact right tool to shift our internal perspective, which is the perfect bridge to our last source, focusing on ancient wisdom for modern healing, the Stoics.
The Stoic philosophers understood human suffering on a remarkably deep level.
Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He ran an entire empire, dealing constantly with war, devastating plagues, and political betrayal. Yet he realized a fundamental truth. True peace, true tranquility comes entirely from how the mind interprets events, not the external events themselves.
The mind is the lens.
Look at how the philosopher Seneca approached this. He talked about reaching a state of euthymia, which means a deep, unshakable inner tranquility.
A beautiful concept.
To get there, he argued, you have to completely stop comparing yourself to others. Think about being stuck at a red light in heavy traffic. You see the lane next to you inching forward, so you aggressively change lanes. Then your new lane stops dead and the old one starts moving.
We've all been there.
You keep swerving back and forth, getting increasingly stressed, losing your focus on your destination, and risking a crash. That is exactly what comparing yourself to others does to your brain.
You assume everyone else's lane is faster. You see their promotion, their curated vacation photos.
But you never see their engine troubles.
Exactly. Everyone carries invisible burdens.
And that constant, exhausting comparison rapidly erodes our self-worth. And it feeds into another dangerous habit, how we speak to ourselves.
There's a beautiful story from antiquity about the Stoic philosopher Cleanthes. He was walking through Athens and saw a man walking entirely alone, his fists clenched tight, muttering hateful, angry things to himself.
Cleanthes stopped him and asked a very simple, piercing question.
Why do you speak to yourself as if you were your worst enemy?
How often do we say things to ourselves silently in our own heads that we would never ever say out loud to a friend?
Far too often.
The Stoics believed that if you want to heal, you have to start treating yourself with the exact same grace and compassion you would offer someone you deeply love.
Yeah.
You have to actively change the tone of the conversation happening inside your own mind.
And a core part of that self-compassion is practicing acceptance, fighting the reality of what has already happened. A painful job loss, a breakup, a past mistake is entirely useless. It is just exhausting.
It's like riding a bicycle against a violent wind.
Exactly. If you clench your jaw and try to fight the howling headwind with pure brute force, you will exhaust yourself and go absolutely nowhere. But if you accept that the wind is there, if you lower your head, adjust your posture, and work with the resistance, you can keep moving forward. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's adjusting your posture to reality.
The Stoics also write about what we might call the camera zoom, because our emotions constantly distort our reality.
The lens gets stuck.
You send a text message, someone doesn't reply for an hour, and suddenly your brain zooms all the way in. They hate me, I'm abandoned, I'm worthless. When you are zoomed in that tightly, a deleted text looks like a total catastrophe.
But if you mentally adjust the zoom lens,
zoom out to the perspective of your whole week, your whole year, your entire life. You quickly realize it's just a tiny, insignificant pixel in the vastness of your story. As the old saying goes, this too shall pass.
Sometimes the healthiest, most radical thing we can do is simply allow ourselves to stop. The actor Jim Carrey, who has been very open about his own profound struggles with depression, offered a brilliant reframe of the condition.
He suggested that we should think of the word depressed as deep rest.
Deep rest.
Your body is demanding deep rest. It is physically and mentally exhausted from the avatar, the character, the fake smile you have been forcing yourself to play for the world. It is your body saying, I can't play this part anymore. I need to rest.
It is a profound, compassionate way to look at it. So let's bring all these complex threads together. Depression and anxiety are incredibly multifaceted. They are not simply a weakness, a moral failing, or a bad attitude.
Not at all.
As we've explored today, they are deeply tied to ancient survival genes we inherited from hominins, the bacteria living in our gut, unhelpful neural highways carved into our physical brains, and the immense unnatural stressors of modern life.
It is a real, tangible illness. It is absolutely not a lack of willpower. But the beautiful, hopeful thing is because it has so many different roots, there are countless ways to treat it. From advanced medical therapies like ketamine and ECT, to daily medications, to simply tracking your daily goals with a pen and paper.
Or dancing in your living room, or finding progression in a video game.
Exactly. And remember, if you ever find yourself feeling like that man in Cleanthes's story, walking through life with clenched fists, battling your own inner voice,
Yeah,
you have the power to step back.
you really do.
You can take a breath, adjust that mental zoom lens, and consciously change the tone of the conversation you are having with yourself. You deserve your own compassion.
Beautifully said.
We want to leave you with one final thought today, something for you to mull over when the screen goes dark. We talked a lot today about neuroplasticity and how our brains are constantly building pathways based on repetition.
The neural highways.
Right. If our brains are so highly plastic that a simple video game or a daily log of chores can physically carve new, healthier neural pathways out of the dark, it begs a fascinating question.
What's that?
What if our deepest moments of melancholy aren't a sign that we are broken, but rather a fierce biological demand to finally design a life that actually fits who we are? What invisible neural highways are we accidentally paving with our current everyday habits? Every time we scroll mindlessly, every time we fixate on a negative comment, or let a cynical thought run unchallenged? What roads are we building in our own minds right now, and where will they eventually take us?
Thank you for spending this time with us. Take care of yourselves.